Well, good evening, everyone. Tonight we are really privileged to have with us the multi-award winning photographer and filmmaker Carolyn Mendelsohn. She's going to talk to us about her 6-year project called Being In Between, where she captured the images of young girls as they transition from being young girls to young women, and discuss with them their future. And many of us will have seen the images develop over the years. I've certainly been aware of the project for several years. And I'm always taken by the direct look that these powerful young women are giving to the camera. Carolyn has been, amongst other things, an artist in residence in the northeast of Scotland, she told me. But this work started 6 years ago. It's been published in The Guardian, The Sunday Times, Le Monde, BJP, the RPS Journal, amongst other things. She won a gold medal in the RPS International Print Exhibition. And I could go on, but if I go on, we won't get a chance to hear you, Carolyn. So I shall pass over to her. Now, what Carolyn would like to do is talk for most of her talk, and then we will leave time for questions. So unless you've got something that's a really burning question that you need to ask halfway through, please don't interrupt. But if you want to ask questions, put them in the chat field, and Sean, our webmaster who's co-hosting this, will be able to gather together the questions, and we should have plenty of time at the end to listen to your questions and Carolyn's answer. So I'm going to stop sharing, Carolyn, now, and I hope, and we'll see if you can. Well, that should be. You should now be able to share your screen.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It says my internet is unstable, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Here we go. Can you see that?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. And if my internet is unstable, as it says, please do tell me, and I'll have to log in and out. So I'm really delighted to be here. So thank you so much, Alan, for inviting me. And I'm really happy to share this work that I've done over the past 6 years. I'm going to talk about my background. I'm going to talk about the project itself and how it happened. I'm going to talk about how it got to be exhibited and the creation of the book. And I'm also going to kind of talk about the stories of some of the individual girls who I photographed. And absolutely, please do ask questions in chat, and then I will answer them at the end of the talk. So Being In Between is a series of portraits with recorded interviews of girls aged between 10 and 12. And it explores the transition between girlhood and young adulthood. And it's kind of based on my memory of being that age. You know, as part of the project, I interviewed them, I recorded them. Each portrait has a text that goes with it. But I will talk about that slightly later. But first of all, I'll talk about my story. So I didn't ever intend to be a photographer. I actually had ambitions to be an actor when I was a child. And I was very driven. So I kind of focused on acting and drama and theatre, and that was my starting point. I moved from being a performer to being a director and co-directing big epic performances, city play for Hull City. This was called No Surrender, a promenade performance. But I was always interested in the visual aspect of my work and the telling of the story. I was always interested in the stories of people, of place, and of community. I started to experiment within my theatrical work, my making theatre work, and I started to use film that I projected into performance. And then slowly and strangely, I was seen as an artist and a filmmaker. So none of this was planned. This was just as I went on, I became very interested in film. And because I was interested in story of location, people and place, I learned as I went on, and I started to be commissioned to create large site-specific films. So this is Lumina, which was a 2-screen film on the side of a ferry in the lock gates of Hull. And it was about people who had moved to the city of Hull on the ferries, and their stories, and the juxtaposition between the people going on that ferry out to Zeebrugge or Rotterdam, and the story of the people that had come in. And it had, and because of my background in theatre, it was like we had installations, we had braziers, we gave people soup, borscht and vodka, and created the whole environment and atmosphere. I was also interested in sound as well, so there was an amazing soundtrack with this. So why photography? So I was, I had quite an exciting career in theatre and the visual arts, but photography came about because as a parent, I became a parent, and as a parent, I wasn't able really, and I had 3 very young children, to travel, to go to Brussels to do the City of Culture in Brussels. It was jobs like that I was getting. So I kind of lost my sense of being a creative, and I was always had seen myself as a creative. So when I guess my last child was very small, I picked up a camera, and then suddenly it was like having an epiphany. The camera enabled me to be creative within my own like square meter. And though I had used cameras before, I never seriously thought about photography. It was always something other people did. And also as a child, I came from a family of photographers. And I always found it very invasive that in every single occasion at home, I'd be eating food and it would be documented. I would be going out, it would be documented. We'd be all corralled into a group, it would be photographed. And I found it as a young person really, really invasive. So I never thought of being a photographer, though I have to say, I loved photographs. I loved going to galleries. I liked looking at photographs. But when my children were tiny, I found the camera. I started to use it. I had an epiphany that I could tell my story using still images. I could be creative using still images. So I went on a huge learning curve, and I spent hours and hours every day photographing, learning, sharing my work, documenting my family. And then I started to be seen as a photographer. I also got into a very, I talk about this sometimes, after about a year and a half, I found myself in a TV reality show that some of you may remember called Picture This with Martin Parr, where they were looking at 6 of the country's emerging digital photographers. I, however, I'd only just started, and I was competing against people that were doing amazing documentary photography, fashion photography. I think I was probably the comic turn, but so I kind of fell into the deep end. But the thing with me is that I could always see a picture, I could always see a story. I was always interested in connecting with people. And so I started to take on professional commissions. I was very interested still in story and in portrait and in lifestyle. And I did a lot of lifestyle and commercial photography. But also, if you have a look at the picture on the left, that's actually my son, Oscar, who's now 20. And that's him at 6. So any opportunity, I would work with my kids. I would, poor Oscar in the little wood playing his little violin. But for me, it was about creating something that was interesting to look at, that you as the viewer would go in and want to find out more. So the other kind of work, again, is this picture here is like it's actually a little document of my daughter when she was 3. And she was very into football, and she had just fouled her brothers, and I documented that moment. I like the idea of having ideas and creating them into still images. images that had some kind of cinematic feel to them. And that's another one of Poppy. So it's quite interesting, this photograph. So obviously, as a photographer, as there are photographers here, what I always say to people is you take photographs of things that are within your life, things that are near to you. It might be your family, it might be people you know. That's how I honed and learnt my skills. This picture of Poppy was at a point, I think I'd been a photographer for about 5 years, and I was about to give it up. And then I was about to run off to do a shoot, and there was Poppy sitting there in this beautiful, beautiful light. And I had my camera with me. I took this photograph, and I then sent it off to a competition, and it won the competition. And for me, it was a case of, I was feeling like I should give up. I didn't feel there was a point to doing photography anymore, particularly commercial work. And then I won this competition and then went on another trajectory. So I'm also incredibly fascinated by fashion. I take on fashion commissions. I enjoy doing album covers. And here's some more. But you know, the work that I really love is always rooted in real life, is always rooted in people's real experiences. So here I'm sharing with you a series I did of people living with dementia. So I was invited into a care home. This care home was for people living with dementia, and I was invited at that point to document their lives, not their lives, the workshops that were being run for them. And whilst I was there, they said, you can take portraits. I said, yeah. And they said, would you take these portraits of the people here? So I said, absolutely. So I was taken into this very beige looking room with a chair on it, and people were going to come in with their partners or with their carers or with their families. I was to take their portraits. But I saw immediately that this room, which was beige and there was a massive amount of light coming through, that I would not be able to create that intimate portrait that I really wanted to. So I spoke to the care worker. We found a blanket, a dark blanket. We put it, attached it to a cupboard, and then I closed these blinds. It was bright, bright sunlight, really, really, until there was a tiny gap left to put a diffuser through. And it was a dark and very still and quiet space. And then as people came in, the very interesting thing for me was that the act of photography is something we are all really familiar with. So for these people, even if they were ill, very ill, that moment when I took the photograph was a moment that was so recognizable. And it was a calm and still space. So I'm still building up this series, and it was really about giving them the opportunity to be photographed with dignity and to be photographed with their families. So that's the kind of work I love doing. So sometimes I get commissions that terrify me, but I still do them because I always do things that frighten me. So this is one of them, which is, I was asked to reimagine a painting by Flora Lyon called Women's Canteen at Phoenix Works. I had 3 hours, and there were 32 people in this portrait. I had to recreate the tableau. I had a very short period of time to do it in. But it's also the things that really scare me are also things that really motivate me and things that I learn from. So I'm forever putting myself in a position where I'm being challenged as a photographer and as an artist. So this picture was one of the Portrait of Britain winners. And these people within this picture are all women who represent Bradford, from a baroness to an MP to a midwife to a poet, or to a policewoman, all kinds of women. But I still, as you can see, I'm interested in the story and the connection. So personal projects. So why do I do personal projects? So, you know, they're like my beating heart. They really are. I couldn't take on any commercial work if I wasn't doing personal projects, because it would be too dry, too meaningless for me. So what I love to do is to use my camera as a tool to explore the world, to ask questions and to find out things I'm interested in learning more about. So it might be something very simple from this. I took this series about 10 years ago. I was commissioned to make a film in Hexham that I was then projecting on a wall in the Abbey with sound. And as I was making the film there, I saw all these interesting individual traders. And so for me, it was really a great time. I approached them all individually, and I spent time with each of them individually to take their photographs. And this is just a piece of personal work. It gives me the opportunity to find out about things. I'm very curious about people, and to really give them a platform to tell their story. This work, it's interesting, Hexham, the council saw this work and then commissioned me the year after to complete it, and then they exhibited it. So everything I do has a huge learning curve. I'm going to tell you the story of being in between, though, because that's why I'm here. The 6-year project. Now, being in between is based really on my memories of being the age of 12 on the left and 10 on the right. And I remember feeling incredibly self-conscious when I was that age, particularly when I was about 11 or 12. I always wore layers. I always had huge thoughts in my head that I couldn't really express, because I thought if I told people what I was thinking, they might think I'm completely mad and they might lock me away. And it's the sorts of things that we as adults can express quite openly, or we can think them and we know where to put them. But when you're growing up and you change a lot and you have all these thoughts about the world and about yourself, you don't know where to put them. So that's one of the things. I also felt very uncomfortable. The other thing I noticed was that friends of mine who had girls, girls of about 8 were really free-spirited, and it seemed as soon as they got to the age of about 9, they started to become incredibly self-conscious. And I could see that myself. And that along with my memories of this age really made me want to explore it visually. There's one story that I do tell quite a lot, and that's the story of the green shorts. So I remember it was an incredibly hot day, and my dad was doing a barbecue because he liked to do barbecues. And I was, if we go back, we can see me probably in my jeans. And I was sat in my room thinking, it's really hot. Should I put on a pair of shorts? Shouldn't I put on a pair of shorts? Should I put on a pair of shorts? And I kind of it went on and on in my head for about 2 hours until I decided, yeah, it's really hot. I really should put on a pair of shorts. So I put on this pair of like green fluorescent shorts, probably not quite as green and fluorescent as this, but this is a version of them. And I remember walking to the top of the stairs and my dad being at the bottom, my dad kind of coming in, looking at me and saying, Carolyn, your legs look really white and chubby in those shorts. And then and it was a flippant parental comment, but me being kind of 11, ran back into my room, changed into my layers and went down. And for years afterwards, my friends would say to me, Carolyn, what's your issue? What is your issue with your legs? And I said, well, of course they're white and chunky. And then realizing as I got to be an adult that actually this was based on something that somebody had said to me, that my father had said to me at that age. And it really struck me that things that are said when you're at that pivotal age, when you're between childhood and young adulthood, really change the way you see yourself and change the way you journey on into your adult self. And I wanted to look at this and explore it. And I wanted to give girls of this age the opportunity to have their portraits taken and to appear as they chose to appear. So I kind of did a bit of research because I was thinking I'll do it as at 12. And then of course, Sally Mann did a piece of work which is called At 12. And then we have the brilliant Renika Dijkstra, who did a lot of work with young adolescent girls exploring that age. And we have Helen van Meen, who's very well known for her work with girls of that age, and obviously Julia Fullerton Batten. But I decided that what I wanted to look at was not just an age, but I wanted to look at that 10, 11, 12. There are some 10-year-olds who are really grown up, and there's some 12-year-olds who are still girls. I wanted to give them the opportunity to be who they are. So I did a call out. I wrote a blog post. I shared my story. I shared images. I said, I would love to give girls of this age the opportunity to have a really strong portrait taken of themselves, to wear the clothes of their own choosing, and also to be given the opportunity to answer questions about their lives. There was a big process behind this. I had a questionnaire, and at all times, I copied in their parent or their carer. So there was a questionnaire where they gave me their name, they gave me their address, they told me about their hobbies and any special needs, and I gave them the instructions, which were wear the clothing of your own choice, I'll do the portrait shoot with you, and then I'll interview you and record it. And it also had a release form. So part of it was that they needed to agree that if they were going to have their portrait taken, that this portrait could be used for the project. And I was really keen on them understanding what the project was about and then wanting to be part of the project. It wasn't just an opportunity to have a portrait taken. So at the portrait sitting, I use the same backdrop with the same set of questions. So here is that backdrop. This backdrop, I had to borrow spaces. I carted it around everywhere with me. And I had 2 lights, and the lighting in all my pictures has a similar feel to it because of the backdrop, but obviously I light each one differently. So you can see it here. I begged and borrowed spaces and I organized shoots over the years. I'm going to show you a film, but before, I'm just going to stop the share because what I want to make sure is that you hear, and I'm not entirely convinced that that I put it on sound. So I'm going to share it again. Here we go. So hopefully you can see that. So as part of the project, as I was saying, I interviewed them and I recorded the interview. So I'm just going to show you, I'll show you a couple of minutes of this so you get a feeling of what I did. With the portraits, each girl has answered the questions. So I worked with a composer and we edited the soundscape that actually goes with the exhibition, but also you can hear the girls' voices.
I'm 10 years old. I love my family, friends, acting, singing and dancing. I dislike pigeons, clowns and really big dogs.
Love maths and I like art too. I dislike it when people are mean to other people because I've had it done to me and I know what it feels like, and it's really hard to go through.
When I'm an adult, I was thinking I could be a teacher, but then I changed my mind and I want to be a vet now because I love animals.
I'm 12 years old. I'd like to help people in any way I can, that's all I'd like to do. My dream is I'd like to have world peace, but if I can't have that, then I'd like to be able to fly. I'd wish for a cure for cancer.
I hope in the future to move to France because I just love the way it's so large and so hot, and I like all the little cobbled streets. I find it really sweet. I would like to either be a doctor or a hairstylist. I really hate people being mean and cruel. My ambition is to save many people's lives.
My dream is to become a princess. I'd like to tell you I'm autistic. I don't always understand things the same. My hobbies are singing, dancing and making things. I'm scared of ghosts.
So I won't show you all of that, but you can see that what those girls are saying is really significant, whether it's what their dream is or what their fear is, also things that they shared about themselves. They shared and they trusted me to record that. Now I'm going to show you Mabel here. Mabel was the very first Being in Between girl, and she was like the blueprint for the series. And what I do as part of the process is I set the lights up and I explain what I'm doing. And I want at all times for the girls to be part of the process, to almost like co-produce that moment. So I explained to Mabel that what I wanted was for her to look right into the camera lens, not to stare, but to look, and to imagine that she was looking at somebody, that it was an engaged look, because what was in my head was that these pictures, these portraits, the girls would be looking at us. So often we as photographers take photos of people. The subjects become the models and we go into gallery and we look at them. But what I wanted was very much that these girls were empowered and were looking directly at us. We talked about how they were to stand. So it might be that they were comfortable with their arms folded. And it's interesting, the arms folded, because some people might think that that's defensive, but actually I think it's quite a powerful stance. So for Mabel, she folded her arms. For some, it might be their arms by the side, but they were always part of that process. And we'd try out different things. I would move the lighting as well. So after this, Mabel, I interviewed Mabel, and she said, I fear one day that we will all be the same, that people will get an idea of how we should live, how we should act, and how we should look like, and everyone will be afraid to be different. There's a couple of things about this. This was a theme, kind of ran through a little bit, that that whole thing about identity and that whole thing about being as other people, the pressure to look a certain way, the pressure to be a certain way. But Mabel really articulated it so clearly. And something interesting for me is that some people have said, I didn't realize that young people thought these things. Well, I think if you think these things, then I would always say, never underestimate what a young person, what a child is thinking. They just don't get the opportunity to articulate it. They don't get asked the questions often. So we have 4 girls here. So I kind of sometimes put them in almost like groupings, community groups. Alice, I'll talk about a little later on the left. She's a very familiar picture. I'll talk about Abby now. So you can see Abby there. Abby, the work was being exhibited in Hull at its first stage, really. And Abby came along, and there she was with a cloak, a sword, and all in black. And I remember thinking, she was like little and very sweet. I remember thinking, as a photographer, I didn't say this to her, as a photographer, I was thinking, how am I going to take a photograph of her? She's all in black and my backdrop is quite dark. But then she stood in front of the lights and she was so regal and so important. And it was just a lovely moment. And then I interviewed her, and then that's when she said, when I want to be an adult, I want to be an architect. And when I get enough money, I will move to Romania and raise wolves. Now, Abby's dad said to me that she was at a phase in her life where she started to question whether she could wear these clothes. She started to doubt herself because her friends had started to tease her. Abby's portrait was part of an article that BuzzFeed did. So the work got into Huffington Post and BuzzFeed, and Abby's picture went viral, and it was commented on by adults all over the world. And the adults were saying, I want to be like Abby when I'm grown up. Abby's so cool. So for Abby, this was like a really transformative moment it changed her trajectory from a girl who's starting to doubt how she was and what she should wear, to a girl who realized actually it didn't matter. The girls thought that she was, the world thought she was great, she was important. So Abby's now coming up to 16, and she actually is a really amazing character, and she started to take photographs and started to gig photography, but her picture has always touched me greatly. So you see these very different girls, their characters come out. You have Heavens, who's like got so much attitude and energy, and then you have Maria. I think I'll show you Maria slightly soon. So we have brilliant Eden Nye. Eden, who had, again, I took Eden's portrait about 1.5 years ago. My ambitions show people who I really am through what I'm good at, and put a message out there that you can be who you want to be and not who anyone else wants to be. And then Erin, and Erin is half Bulgarian. At this time, Brexit was going through, and Erin was really concerned about how people would see her, and would they be ashamed of her, and the fact that she is from a different culture. Erin, I think, found it really helpful to express these things and to have her thoughts and her words written down. You have Betty, Maria, and Laura, so you can see very different. It was really important to me that the reason this project took such a long time to complete, part of it was that I wanted it to be a community of girls from all kinds of backgrounds. This is Betty. Again, I took her portrait in Hull. And Betty, I'm scared of being in a room by myself when it's completely silent. These little moments that they articulated. Marie, who came in and said to me, I'm terrified of everything. I'm so scared of everything that I shake and tremble with fear when I talk to people. That was one of the first things she said to me. There was something so amazing and unique and wonderful about Marie. So what she said was interesting too. My dream is to become a good teacher so I can help children overcome their difficulties and become great people like doctors and prime ministers. And that was interesting about Maria, is that she, unlike most of the other young people, she wanted to help other people achieve their dreams. There's something really, for me, there's something really beautiful and compelling about Maria. And I hope that the older Maria is feeling much more confident about her life. And then Madison, one of the girls who came earlier on, Madison was just, she was, I think Madison was 11 and she came in. I instantly felt a real great sympathy for her, really liked her. I could imagine what her life was like. And Madison said, my ambition is to save many lives. And then we have Estelle. And you can see these very different girls. Estelle, who's very into sport, wants to be in the Olympics and wants to go to Greece with her best friend. Aisha and Heavens. Now, you know, what's interesting is that over the period of time, the interviews showed they reflected what was happening historically and also sociologically in the world. We have Alice here. Alice came along and she was this, again, quiet, small 10-year-old. And she stood in front of my lights, and wherever I place the lights, because I move the lights according to each girl, they're all different heights, different sizes, different skin colors, and I'm moving them so that I can get the most powerful picture I can. So there is Alice. And she looked amazing. Wherever I put the light, she had this really unusual quality to her that came out photographically, a real strength behind her eyes. So Alice, I used to aspire to be a teacher. Now I want to be a vet. I dislike it when people are mean to other people because it's really hard to go through. So Alice's picture became the best known picture really because it won the gold medal in the Royal Photographic Society International Print Exhibition. Because of that, that was an amazing thing for me because it meant suddenly the work was seen on a different platform. It was seen, it was in the Sunday Times, people started to recognize the series, and this was about 2016, and it meant that more people engaged with the series. We have Jolie and Lucy here. Most of the girls I have I direct them to not smile, to just, actually it's not even to not smile, but just to be neutral, because there's something about a neutral face that I feel really tells something about the character. However, Jolie was one of those girls who just was such a smiler, and I couldn't possibly tell her not to smile. There we are. Megan, Claudia, and Nishat. And Megan, who was 10 at the time. I dislike McDonald's and I dislike cancer, and people make life hard for others. And my ambition is to make an impact on the world. It doesn't have to be big, but I want to make a difference. So, you know, Megan has 3 siblings, and her youngest sister had neuroblastoma, eye cancer. So their whole lives really were geared around their younger sister. They're an amazing family, and so therefore what she says also reflects her experience. Heather there, and Heather was amazing. Heather has Down syndrome, but absolutely, I'm a complete klutz actually. When I'm taking portraits, I knock down lights. I never threaten anyone because they think they need to help me. So Heather would be saying, I remember my light stand wobbling and Heather trying to help me sort it out. And brilliant Nuri, and as I was saying, that everybody wears the clothes of their choice. And it's interesting because it's also an insight into fashion over those 6 years. So Nuri at that time chose to wear her onesie and chose to wear the bow, and that was very fashionable at the time. And I love that picture. And then we have Megan, who was 12 and very grown up 12-year-old. Amber, Celia, and Tabitha. Phoebe and Jodie. I love Jodie's little band around her wrist. I love it when they've got kind of, they've bitten their nails, or they're things about them that are so uniquely them. So Jodie came straight from, I think she'd just been going to a riding lesson. So you can see Jodie, what Jodie's dream, to be a horse rider as well as a dancer, as well as a gymnast. My hopes for the future are for homeless people to be off the streets, and for the people of Africa to have food, and for the world to be a happy place. So there's lots of things about homelessness and starvation and the world being happy. And then Catalina, who came over because her cousin was doing it. So Catalina was visiting her cousin, and she was extraordinary. I love what she says. I fear being alone in the dark, spiders, everyone I know in the world dying, being the last person on earth, no books to read, and a world without happiness, that would be terrible. And Olivia and Gary. Now, some of these girls made, because of how they were, it meant that I changed the way I actually did the project. So Olivia, here's Olivia. I wish to have a happy life and accomplish my dreams. And Olivia said at the end, after I'd asked her all the questions, is there anything else you'd like me to say? And no one had ever said that to me before. So I said to Olivia, oh, is there something you'd like to tell me? And she said, I was born with a heart condition, which has a really complicated name, I can't remember. But basically, I was born with 4 chambers in my heart, and only 2 of them were working. So Olivia, who was so totally engaged and extraordinary during the shoot, she grabbed every opportunity, hadn't been able to tell me the thing that was so part of her life. And she really, and I would not have noticed, she has a scar, but I wouldn't have seen it. And I was so taken with what she said, with the fact that she said, is there anything else you'd like me to say? That after that, I always asked the girls, was there anything else that they wanted me to share with them. Jamie Lee, Zara and Olivia. Jamie Lee, at the end of her interview, when I said, Jamie Lee, is there anything you would like to tell me about yourself? I'd like to tell you I'm autistic. I don't understand things in the same way as other people. The interesting thing is, so she looks so strong and powerful there. And I remember saying to her mum, look, Jamie Lee said this, but I don't really want to use it as a quote because I don't want people to look at her picture and say, poor Jamie Lee, you know. And her mum said, so this is a learning thing for me. Her mum said to me, no, Jamie is really proud of her autism. It's what makes her her. So please include it. So I have learned so much by doing this. And Zara, I love Zara. I love the fact that I'd love to go swimming in the sea because there's no one there telling me what to do. I can just do whatever I want. I love that. My ambition is to inspire girls to do jobs like being astronauts and things like that. All the girls are so different. And then the kind of irony and the juxtaposition with Caitlin here wearing a selfie t-shirt and me taking the portrait. And then the simple, I love my family and I hate it when people are mean to each other. And Alice, who I took about a year and a half ago. So Alice has craniosynostosis, and her mother contacted me and said, Alice and I feel it's really important that people see people that are like her. So Alice was wonderful, and her mom was concerned that maybe I would either Photoshop her and I was going, no, absolutely not. It's actually about these girls being who they are and celebrating them for who they are. So, you know, Alice wants to be a writer. She loves writing. When I'm an adult, I want to be an author, and maybe I want to set up a business to help children who are different to us, like either in foster families or in care, or who have a disability. There's a stillness to these girls, and I think there is something that invites us to return their gaze, to understand them. Poppy, Kiara, and Rakea. Blessing. When I'm an adult, I want to be a doctor or midwife. I fear dying and leaving everyone behind. And then her dream, to go to Jupiter. I'd like to swing around the rings. And this is actually my daughter, Poppy, who looks nothing like this. Poppy said to me, so I started this well before Poppy was even 10. And I said, oh, Pops, do you want to be in the series? And it was no, no, no. And then on the eve of her 12th birthday, she went, oh, okay, then. You can do a night before I'm 12 portrait. So she looks entirely different now. So this is what Poppy said. And it was interesting for me because I had to adhere to my own rules, which was, do not interfere with her clothing choice. Do not scruffle her hair so it looks like I wanted it to look like. I had to give Poppy agency for her to be who she is. So I love running. When I'm running fast, it feels like nothing can stop me. I really hate it when people treat others differently because of their race or ethnicity or gender. My hopes for the future are that I carry on with the things that I love, carry on with the things that make me feel confident, and I hope I stay as carefree as I am at the moment. That's 11-year-old Poppy. So 14-year-old Poppy is very different, and I'm really delighted that I took her portrait because I realize how transient and fragile this period of time is. Stephanie. My dream is to have a big house, a loving family, and loads of pets, mostly dogs. I wish there was no evil in the world and we were all nice to everyone. Everyone had a voice and no one would be put down or anything. Lucy and Rafaro. Now Aria, I took her portrait, and what Aria says became what a lot of the young people said. So Aria said at that point, which was like a year and a half ago, young people started to become very educated about climate change and very passionate about it. And that was reflected in the interviews I did with them. So Aria, I believe that in 12 years, we could all die from climate change. It will be irreversible. People should try and recycle properly. My hope for the future is to be happy and that the world is back to how it should be. It should be in a good state. So reflective of so many of the young people who were very concerned about environmental issues. The last two of the series, so I've taken portraits of 90 girls. The last two of the series were February last year. Lottie and Becca, identical twins. Becca has cerebral palsy, and they do everything together. And I love, her mother said to me, hope you don't mind Becca's choice of t-shirt. So I said, not at all. So Becca's wearing, and Becca is in a wheelchair, and she has selected, I'm just in it for the parking, which is great, which is ironic, and only Becca could get away with that. So Becca said, when I'm an adult, I want to be a racing car driver, scientist, and a singer. My dream is I want to walk like my sister so I can run with her, go where she can go. She can climb trees and I can't. If I could walk, that is what I want, to go where my sister goes. My wish is to walk. I felt it was really important. There was nobody in the series who was in a wheelchair, who had physical access problems. And I'm so delighted that Becca, who's absolutely brilliant, is part of that, part of the series, who's able to tell her story. And then Lottie, who was the very last girl I photographed. Lottie talks about environmental issues, and she was the last girl and the first girl to mention, and this is February, I worry about the coronavirus. So that was really interesting for me, because I said to her at that time, and it was maybe, I don't know, about 6 weeks before lockdown, I remember saying to her, you know what, I'm really worried about it too. So, you know, this project took me 6 years, and it's about, I did it, it's a personal piece of work. There have been times, so the Arts Council helped fund the whole exhibition, but to get funding is really challenging. Most of the work wasn't funded as such. I just had to borrow spaces and do the work because I felt driven to doing it. But I did, whilst the work was going up, I sought sponsorship. So I invited the paper suppliers to come to the exhibition when it was in 2016 in Hull. They came along, and they absolutely loved the work, and they decided they want to sponsor future work, and they did some PR for me, which was amazing. And sponsorship is always about creating partnership, always about seeing how you can work together to make something happen. I've had mentors. One of them is Zelda Cheetle, one of them is Anne McNeil, who I've met on the way. I've entered exhibitions, competitions, the reason I've entered them is because I wanted so much for that work to be seen. I didn't expect it to win anything. I just wanted it to get in front of people. I think it's quite useful to enter exhibitions because it enables you to curate the work. The ups and downs, it's taken a long time. I worried about whether people would get bored of it after year 2. And I remember having a meeting with Anne McNeil from Impressions Gallery and saying this to her. She went, don't be silly. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure people might be getting bored after year 4 or year 3. And she went, no. This is about creating a really rigorous body of work. And we as a gallery and we as curators are always interested in work that is done over a long period of time. And I felt this big weight come off my shoulders because I was always questioning that. There was always issues with space and trying to find people I felt were representative. So there were ups and downs. One of the ups was meeting Zelda Cheetle, who I met at an RPS AGM, where I was about 4 hours late, but I'll talk about that in chat when we finished. But it was about making books, because my dream was to make the book. So over the years, the work has been shown in different galleries. It's won certain exhibitions. And for me, it's been a wonderful thing because it's about those girls' faces being seen by the world. You know, on one level, yeah, it's great as a photographer, but for me, it's actually about that little 12-year-old me. So at the moment, it's being seen at Impressions Gallery, and I will send you some links. So it opened last Saturday. It's there installed. We hope that it will be, that the public will be able to go to it, that lockdown has lifted a little bit. But do have a look at the website, because you'll see films. There's a virtual exhibition as well. It's curated by Anne McNeil, and it's hopefully touring after this. It's great to have, it's the largest exhibition so far of this work. And here are a few little pictures of the installation. And they're films as well that are shown within that. And you can see each has a quote by them. So books, you know, why publish a book? I always had a dream of a book. I always imagined they would be in the book, that these girls' faces and stories could be seen throughout the world. But who is it for? So if you're thinking about a book, who is the book for? I made a dummy. I had to curate the photographs. I had to think, do I self-publish? I knew nothing about publishing. I had to do a lot of research. I met Zelda at this this book workshop that RPS Contemporary Group were doing with the AGM, and I was there very late. I showed my work right at the end. There was a reason for being late. I won't go into it, and I fully expected her not to like it, to think it had all been done before, but she absolutely loved it. And from then on, Zelda was a real supporter for the project. It really helps to have these people on side. I sent the work off to Hoxton Press. I imagined it as Hoxton Press book, but they weren't interested because it wasn't London enough for them at the time. And then I sent it to I talked to Colin Wilkinson from Bluecoat Press, and I said, I don't think you'd be interested in my work, Colin, but I'd love to show it to you, because and maybe you can advise me. And he said, what do you mean I won't be interested? Just let me make that decision. So I sent him a PDF, and he came back and said, I absolutely love it. I'd love to publish it. And this was a couple of years ago. And then it was going to be published last year, and then it was put to this year, and then came lockdown, and then I thought it wasn't going to happen. And then he basically said in June, let's do it. People are buying books, let's do it. I was like, I'd put the idea aside. So so I had a publisher on my side. We did a Kickstarter. Kickstarter is such an emotional process. You sit there seeing, you know, you have a few hours where a book isn't bought. I worried about it not reaching its target, but it did. And Nikon came on board as well, which was wonderful, and Impressions Gallery. And it was like a dream come true. I work with a designer, so you don't have to, you can design it yourself. It's really useful working with a designer. So Joe Gilmore was the designer of the book. I do hope you get the opportunity to see it. It's available on the Bluecoat Press website. It's available on the Impressions Gallery website, slightly cheaper on the Impressions Gallery website, because whilst the exhibition is going on, they are offering it for £24. And I think it's a book that isn't about young people, girls. It's about humanity. It's about hope. It's about people. It's about those beautiful portraits, but it's about their words reaching us and reaching our hearts. So I'm going to leave the last word with Lottie and Becca. I ask each girl what they think of being part of the process.
Showing what we really are. Yeah, showing who we really are, and letting our voice be heard. And so we're not in the shadows.
So you're not in the shadows. Thank you so much. Becca, thank you. Lottie, that was brilliant. Thank you.
So everyone, thank you very much. I overran a bit and I really apologise, but I really hope that inspired you a little bit, and that if you have any questions, I'd be so happy to answer them, anything at all.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Yes, that's a very nice ending, a little bit emotional actually. Yeah, good question came in from Cliff Harvey, who was asking, how many photos did you take of each girl? How many times did you have to make photographs? And did you do it on more than one occasion, or was it always just the one time?
It was always the one time. Okay. I always the portraits sitting, so I'd see them for about an hour and a bit, and the portraits would take maybe 20 minutes. And sometimes I knew that I had that portrait within 5 minutes, but if I stopped the portrait sitting too quickly, the girls would be upset. I realized that. They were like, oh, you finished.
Mhm.
So I always make sure there were about 20 minutes where I work with them. And I would take maybe 40 portraits. And then I would select one out of all of them, occasionally two when I wouldn't be able to make a decision. I would try different things, but there would always be one that really stood out for me.
And Claire Carroll's asked a question, which is a good follow-up to that. Did you give the ladies a copy of the prints?
Always. So I gave the girls and their families a digital copy. So
Right.
part of the process was that they were given a digital copy, and that they could print that copy or they could share it on social media, but they were very happy for it to be used for the project.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. I thought of this question, but John Sanchez asked a very good one. Do you have thoughts of following up with these young ladies at a later stage in their lives?
Well, it's really interesting because for me, this project is about this stage. And I think we are so interested, and we invest ourselves in these girls and in these pictures, and we want to know what happens always. You know, we have 7up, don't we, the series. We always want to know what happens next.
Sure.
But for me, it's actually about what happens at that really transient time. And that's so I don't intend on following up. There's another thing about not following up, is that it makes it a different project, but also logistically following up would be really challenging, because I've taken it over 6 years and there are 90 girls in it, and then they live all over the place. Maybe somebody else will in many years to come. Maybe somebody else will follow up.
Yeah, we heard one of the young ladies saying that she was, I think I heard that she was interested in photography. Maybe she'll follow up.
Yeah, that would be a really nice little circle, wouldn't it? That would be good. I'd like that.
Yeah. Now, obviously, there was a couple of questions about how do we get a copy of the work, and we've seen that. I've shared the link for the Impressions Gallery bookshop.
And this is the beautiful book.
Yes, I've got one that looks just like that on my desk.
It smells nice. You know, it's great paper. I do hope you get one. I'm so happy about it. I never need to make another book because I'm really happy with this one.
Really good. We saw something about the technical aspects, with particularly the lighting you showed us. Claire Carroll, oh sorry, hang on, I'll just get the name right here. Claudia asked, which type of camera did you use? Were you using or digital? Well, you said digital earlier, didn't you?
Yeah, I did use digital. I used a D800 Nikon, ancient now, Nikon D800. It has a kind of film feel to it, I think, the work, but that's because of the lighting. So yeah, I used the D800.
Yeah, nice tool.
Very good.
Yeah, let's go through the rest of the questions. Really, that was a good question here from Marge. I hope I said that right. Your sitters were self-selected. I'm interested in how you think this may have affected the final grouping, and how they're representative of their cohort.
So, I mean, they're self-selected, but they're not self-selected. So towards the last couple of years, I did call outs, and I wanted to make sure that there were girls representative of the kind of backgrounds they were from, that it was a broad group of girls from different socioeconomic backgrounds, from different, that they were different girls, that they represented a community of girls. So I did go out to find girls. So for example, I really wanted to have a girl who was in, who had access challenges. And so I had to do lots of research, and obviously the girls have to want to be part of it. So yes, in that way they're self-selecting, but I had to go out and really research and find people that didn't have social media. So yeah, there's a mixture. Yeah, I hope I've answered that question.
I think you've done that really well. It's one thing I remarked about the book. It really is a great snapshot, and it's very diverse, in its mix. I'm just wondering if there's a young gentleman photographer might take up the what's it like for young men?
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually feel that boys of that age still also experience similar things. The reason I've chosen to do girls is because it's kind of autoethnographic. It's based upon my memory of being that age.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I remember a 12-year-old boy coming to the exhibition, and somebody had written in the visitors book. So this was when it was in Halifax at the Crossley Gallery. Somebody had written in the visitor book, I bet boys would want this and guns and war, and I was really upset. He was really upset, and I said, you know what, people really don't have a clue, do they? And in some ways, because he was there, I really wished I could have given him that opportunity to have his portrait taken so he could express his feelings. So it would be great if somebody does that. I think the boy version would be good.
There's plenty of opportunities.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. There's some plenty of comments saying thank you, and a great one here. One of the most inspirational talks I've ever had the pleasure to listen to.
Oh, thank you. That is so kind of you. That is so kind of you. I'm very passionate about the work, and I'm always happy to talk about it, as you'll realise. I've just saw somebody said, what lens? I'm very happy. I'm very happy to answer lens questions. Always use an 85 1.4 lens for those people that want to know the technical side, and nickel. However, occasionally if the space was too small, I'd use a 50. So I always use a portrait lens. That's like a fixed lens.
A prime lens.
A prime lens, yeah. Sorry, I got it wrong, didn't I? I meant a
prime lens. No, you had
lens.
it perfectly right. I mean, yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Well, we're getting lots of thank yous in. I think unless have we got anything striking you can see, Sean, or so?
No, we've answered the questions very well, I think.
Okay, nice. Well,
good discussion.
See if I can find a. Excuse me, I need to find the right file again. Yeah, so just. That's it. And we've seen all this, I think. Are you getting my screen all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the exhibition. It's available online. It's a wonderful exhibition. The YouTube of the opening is worth having a look at as well. And when you go on YouTube, you'll actually find there's a virtual tour of the exhibition as well. So I was looking at that this afternoon. And I think you've got everything in there in the Bluecoat Press and so on. And I think, Sean, you sent it out on chat there. I saw that. So I think that's all that remains for me to say is, Carolyn, thank you. I've loved this work ever since I've seen it. And it's so good of you to come along and give us a talk tonight. It was fascinating and inspiring, I think, as has been pointed out already. Lots of people out there thinking, oh, I could go out and do something now. And if it inspires somebody to do a project, great. I think that's wonderful.
That's really good. Alan, can I quickly share the Zelda story?
Sure.
So for those who aren't aware of it, there was an AGM, was it 2 years ago, that Contemporary Group did, and Zelda was invited to do a talk on photo books.
That's right.
I saw it and I was really excited because at that point I was so wanting to have the work published. And I spent a couple of £100 on getting these beautiful prints made. And then it was Saturday, and I thought it was on the Sunday. It was Saturday, and I was my daughter was at this sports club. And then I was on my phone and I could see people from the Contemporary Group talking about the meeting. And I thought, no, my heart sank and I felt sick. I was in kind of Shipley, Bradford area. And then I thought, I can't believe I've missed it. I've been looking forward to this for weeks. And then my daughter came into the car and she said, Mom, you've got to go. And how old is she? About 11. And I said, but I'm hours late. I can't possibly go. And I think Sean, I communicate with Sean. He said, yeah, go, come along, doesn't matter. And so I remember dropping my daughter home, grabbing my prints, driving to Manchester, arriving in Manchester. There was no parking because there was a Conservative conference, I think, going on. And I just, every point, I just felt like crying, but I felt like I had to be there for some reason. And eventually I got parking, then I ran into the room. And it was in the City Hall, I think. And I ran in and there were all these rooms. And I got in, I clattered down the hallway. I got in, I tried to sneak in. I sat at the back and then my phone went off and it was my sat nav saying, you have arrived at your destination, really loudly. I was mortified. I remember Zelda looking up and saying, I think you're here. And then, you know, then I had to sneak the work onto the table without interrupting anyone. And I felt really bad because I wanted to be there for the whole thing. And then, as I said before, I had to wait to the very end. So loads of people are left. And then at last I could show my work to Zelda. And there I was, fully expecting her to say, no, I've been there, seen it. But Zelda was like, loved it. And one of the pictures she had seen before, because it was in a later RPS exhibition, International Portrait Exhibition, but not the Alice picture. And since then, she's been a great supporter. She's written the foreword to the book, and she has really, really supported me and been a mentor. So I always think, go with your gut instinct. If you feel you need to be there, go, do it, do the work. Follow your heart is what I'm trying to say. There, that was it, Alan, really.
No, thank you. It's worth listening to. Now, everybody that's on the call, we are recording this, but we'll wait until the exhibition comes down before we put the recording on YouTube. But it will come eventually, sometime later in the year. So we're hoping that we can all get to go to the gallery. For those of us who live up north, that will be a lot easier than for some. But let's hope that when vaccination's allowing, we end up getting some time to go and see it. Next month, we've got Sarah Lee coming to speak to us. She's a well-known photojournalist, been in, done a lot of work that we're probably familiar with, things like The Guardian and so on. So that's 15th of February at 7 o'clock. But once again, thank you very much, Carolyn. It's been a wonderful talk and a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much.